So good afternoon again, everybody, and we are here with the White Plains City School District Reopening Committee. Different day, different time, and I just thank everybody for being so flexible and coming in on a Tuesday at noon rather than our typical Wednesdays. We'll be back to Wednesdays for our next meeting, and they should be in your calendars. I have a pretty brief update for you before we go into the general updates. So first and foremost, as everybody I believe on the committee is aware, unfortunately in our county, we've been seeing an increase in identified cases of COVID-19. We're up to numbers, according to the county, that we probably saw daily numbers around in May. And while we're not in, according to the county, a crisis situation, which of course is great, we are very cognizant and watching very carefully and making sure that we're doing everything we can at the local level to reduce spread throughout the community. We do know that right now, the state of New York has designated Port Chester as a so-called yellow zone, which comes with it some specific responsibilities and requirements. We also know that the possibility of that zone expanding is directly connected to the average of the number of cases that we see identified in surrounding communities. So the hope is that with the hard work of the folks that are out there right now, and of course in our community, we'll be able to keep those numbers from increasing and not see that designated zone spread. If we do, we have been at the district level working through, in partnership with the county, what we would need to be able to do to move forward in any designation. So we're trying to, as we have, we're trying to plan for all sort of unanticipated or even anticipated outcomes. And of course, we'll keep you posted there. We have seen increases in identified cases of COVID-19 in the White Plains City School District. Fortunately, to date, we've not identified any cases where we could isolate and identify that they are emanating from school. Of course, that's not 100%, but we are able to identify these one-off cases, be able to take the appropriate action in conjunction with the Department of Health, and then move forward. Unfortunately, that's almost an everyday occurrence, as Maggie will share with you. Today, we have 2 more identified cases. Yesterday, I think we had 5 or 6. And these 2 cases today, fortunately, did not impact the school day anywhere within the district. Oh, Maggie's giving me an additional 3. 3 did not impact the school day anywhere in the district. So that's good news. Of course, it's bad news when anybody presents with COVID-19, and we do follow up to make sure that they're doing okay. We always do, and I'll do it again, thank Maggie and our team here in the district for all their hard work, as well as everybody who's working on the contact tracing, because it is truly a Herculean effort, and it doesn't stop when the workday stops. In fact, usually it picks up right about after 5:30 or so, right, Mag? Particularly on Sundays. And so we're continuing to watch that very carefully. A lot of things happening in the schools, which is great. Again, I said last night at our board meeting, our schools are open, and I'm thrilled about that. We're still serving children. We're thrilled about that. We'd like to be serving more children more often, and we'll be talking a little bit more about that this morning. But trying to maintain a positive outlook. Our facilities are still open and we're still operating, and that's great. Also want to thank all of the moms and the dads and all of the faculty and staff and administrators for all their hard work, as always. It is truly appreciated. Do want to also recognize that tomorrow, and this is why we're meeting today, tomorrow's Veterans Day. And of course, for all those who served, we're grateful as well. At this point in time, I'd like to just open it up for updates, general updates from our team leaders. I know that there were several, and I'll just leave it to you, whoever would like to start first. Deborah Augarten.
Why not? So I have several updates today. The first 2 updates involve parent meetings. So tonight is the 2nd parent meeting that will help parents support remote instruction in their home. It's a co-sponsored evening from the district, the Special Needs Committee, and the District PT Council. It is designed for secondary parents to participate in. The elementary one happened last week, I think, and it was very successful. Parents really appreciated the tips and the structures that our behavioral consultants provided for them. So I hope that parents join us this evening. That's at 7 o'clock. And then November 16th, there is a special education coffee talk, again at 7 o'clock, that parents can join. There will be a brief update on special education supports and services, and then parents have asked to go into breakout rooms by grade or by elementary and secondary to share suggestions that they have found helpful at home in structuring the home remote instruction environment. With regard to special education, we're currently engaged in 2 parallel processes. So the first process continues to be to explore how to get more students in for in-person instruction. And for our students, our young students who are in kindergarten and first grade and receive either consultant teacher or integrated co-teaching services, it looks like we are going to be able to have all of those students in 4.5 days a week. So that's really good news for the students and for the staff. They're very excited about it. Highlands is continuing their exploration. They have all integrated co-teaching students in currently, and they might be expanding to include consultant teacher. And the high school continues to explore opportunities to bring the students in more often. However, for parents who might not have heard the service or the grade of their particular child, I want you to know that there's a parallel process that's occurring right now, and that's through the Committee on Special Education in partnership with the buildings. And so we are exploring a variety of data points that are intended to capture students for whom remote instruction is not working because of whatever special learning needs they have. So we're using a variety of data points. We're using grades, we're using progress towards IEP goals, parent feedback, in addition to other criteria. What will happen is we'll be generating a list of student names. The buildings will be working with the Committee on Special Education, as will parents, and we will hold CSE meetings for those children to really determine whether it's additional supports and services or additional opportunities for in-person instruction. So I want parents to be assured that not only are
You're muted again, Deb.
So I'm not sure the last thing that people actually heard. But we anticipate that the process in partnership with parents and buildings will be over before annual reviews begin. So if you have concerns, certainly reach out to our directors of special education, reach out to your building. And again, we're going through a variety of data points ourselves to not only bring children in at a more macro level, but really looking and digging deep to make sure that we are servicing the individual needs of all of our children. So that is the special education update. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Okay.
Thanks, Ms. Augarten. Last night's Board of Education meeting, we were discussing the possibility or new ways in which we could look at potentially bringing more students back more often. The secondary schools have sent out a survey for parents and guardians asking them to identify if they intend to take advantage of full remote for the second marking period, or if they would like to take advantage of hybrid. As the committee knows, the goal here is to really identify the number of students who would be attending on any given day so that in the event that we were able to, we could offer more opportunities for students who wish to attend in person to attend more regularly. I had asked Mr. Martinez and the team at the high school, as well as Mr. Spatafor and his team at Highlands, to take a look at this. And Emily, I wanted to give you an opportunity to give an update. I don't know if you're finished that process yet, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but feel free.
Sure. So thank you, Dr. Ricca. So we did get some information back from that initial survey, and we have, I think, Mr. Vidiello, you're on here as well. You can also chime in. I believe we had an additional 70 or 75 additional families that wanted to switch to full remote. So that brings us, our total's a little bit over 600 at this time. However, we know, as we've talked about at these meetings before, that the challenge is that not only do we have those that have scheduled to be fully remote, we also have the flexibility of students that, for whatever reasons, that are a hybrid model, sometimes do not attend on their day for multiple reasons, whether they're ill or something like that, and therefore they are present virtually. So that has been some of the challenge in trying to pinpoint exactly how many students are in the building in terms of our capacity. So one of the things that we've, because we definitely want to bring more, take care, Rena, more students in. Absolutely, that's what we want to do. We are also exploring the concept of, our students that are struggling learners. Can we try to, provide them an opportunity to get into for more than one day? But also just in general, overall, how do we get more students in? And we really can't get that. We really can't even go to that second level without first really identifying who would be interested in coming in more than one day a week. So at least 2 days a week. So the next step, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be sending out a survey to families. I think that's the next prudent step, is to get that information, because we know from some of the feedback we're getting from some of our families and students is that 1 day a week doesn't seem worth it for them. So they are choosing to stay out, and just do their work remotely. So we believe that if we do provide an opportunity to gauge where families are at, that we might actually have a larger number. So, and then once we get that information, then we can look at that, the cohorts, and whether or not we would consider creating another cohort, or whether it's, and I know Dr. Ricca, you and I spoke, whether being a little bit more creative, and if we have more students, then we can, actually physically allow in the building due to our capacity, challenges, that maybe it's for 1 month, one group gets to come in for a little bit longer for a second day, and then another group, the following month. So we're certainly going to explore all those options. But again, I think we just need to get that data first to figure out our next step. So hopefully we'll be looking to get that survey out by the end of this week, and hopefully have some information right after Thanksgiving to kind of figure out the next steps. And we'll certainly report that out when we do have it.
Thanks, Mr. Martinez. There was also, and we're always appreciative and grateful for thoughts and folks who are sharing thoughts or ideas. And there was one that was shared last night, and I know Dr. Hand was looking into it, about whether or not a rotation, like for instance, a 6-day rotation, I think was what was identified as a possibility. And so we want to look into that. I know Dr. Hand started to look into it. Deb, I don't know if you want to comment or.
No, it's all right. I don't want to mention a particular school that was noted, but we're going to look into it further. And just from some research that I did on the internet between last evening and this morning, was the school right now has 799 students that are selecting to go into the hybrid model, meaning that they're coming into school. They've broken those students up into 3 groups, so that each group would have 266 students, and they are inviting 2 of those groups in 4 times out of a 6-day cycle. So that means that if everybody shows up from school, they're bringing 532 students into the building at once. They're running a period 1 through 4, so they're not running an 8-period day. One day it would be periods 1 through 4. The next day it would be periods 5 through 8. The periods are slightly longer because of the school day, but they're not double periods. So, that would definitely have an impact on our schedule. And it appears to me that if you're staying home on your remote day, or if you're remote only, that you don't have access to the classroom on those days. You have access to learning through structured assignments, learning activities, and projects, but I got to do further research for that. But it doesn't seem as if it's this hybrid fluid model that we're doing, this blended model of in-person, in school, and your children in school, you know, getting that same advantage of the teacher at the same time. The other thing, and I've mentioned this before, is just looking at the courses that are offered for a school that has it's got a little over 900 students in it normally. That course load is probably half of our course load. You know, we have, you know, I would make an assumption that we have almost twice as many courses as that. And their sequence is a very set sequence. So, you know, you'll take 4 years of English and 4 years of foreign language, you know, attending that school. And our students, you know, they might take 2 years of foreign language and then go into a series of more electives. There's a lot that comes into it. There's definitely a lot that comes into it. It's much more complicated than just looking at the size of the school, what hybrid model they're doing, and, you know, how many children they're getting into the school building. But we'll continue to look into it.
Thanks, Dr. Hand. So I'm just processing that really fast. I think, you know, this is this has been our challenge, right? So every lead is worth exploring. Every model is worth trying to overlay. And, but what we keep running into is these major differences in density, in offerings, and also in the archetypal sort of structure of the program. You know, while we're not running a full remote where, hey, you have a full remote teacher and you're in this full remote sort of parallel system, all of our children are in classes. So, you know, there are so many of those scenarios where that's not the case. But every one of them, I think we should keep looking at. Thank you, Deb, for doing that. Mike, I don't want to put you on the spot, Mr. Eaton, but I was just, if there's anything from Highlands, I know you all were looking at it as well.
I think we're frozen. Sorry, Dr. Rick, I think I got cut off.
I'm kicking myself.
I know.
I was gone. I don't know if you were all knocked off too, but I have to tell you, I'm kicking myself because I forgot that the West Coast was going to start their schooling at the exact same time right now. So that's probably why we're getting jammed on Zoom. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, so at Highlands, we're continuing to try to get as many students in as possible. Right now, we're really concentrating on getting our special education students in. We had sent out a survey a little over a week ago for students and parents to choose if they were going to come in fully remote or continue on the path of hybrid. So we're looking at that data right now, and every day Mr. Brown continues to look at the schedule to try to juggle to see if we can get our kids in more. So we're hoping that in the near future that can happen. So we will continue to look at it. And as long as it's safe to bring in kids, that's what our main goal is here at Highlands.
Thanks, Mr. Eaton. And I think that's, I mean, you know, does anybody have any questions or any thoughts about this? This is our constant goal, trying to figure out how to get more children in safely it really is. It's a daily challenge.
I can just say from the elementary level, Dr. Ricka, that yes, we would love to have more children, but at this point, doing it safely is difficult with the number of absences we've seen in my own school. We've had to close down either classes or the entire building. And it definitely is difficult. And I think that as long as we continue to explore options that are presented and we think about what will be best in terms of supporting the instructional needs of our students and the capabilities of our teachers, then that's the direction we should continue to go ahead in, slow and steady.
I also want to just echo what Ms. Lasher said. I mean, I think one of the things we talked about in the last meeting with Dr. Hand about, the cohorts, they work for us in terms of, we've been fortunate that having the different cohorts and limiting the density has allowed our schools to, for the most part, remain open. And I keep saying, knock on wood, we've been fortunate here at the high school to have, isolated incidents where there was limited contact, and therefore school continued to run, with the exception of that one time with one cohort having to quarantine for 2 weeks. For the most part, it's been running. And when we start to bring in more kids, we do increase the chances of potential school shutdown entirely, when we start going down that road. So I think, again, if we can find alternative ways to do it safely, I think we're flexible and willing to do that work. So, that's why we're going to move forward at the high school to explore, some different options and to get that feedback from families.
Thanks, Emily. Are you anticipating that at our next meeting, you all should have an update about survey and where we're situated at the high school?
So probably not. I think just for the fact is, if we get that out by the end of this week, we'll be looking at giving families some time to get that feedback to us. So I'm anticipating it'd probably be the week after the Thanksgiving. At that point, that we'll have that data collected and be able to share out what.
Okay, just December 2nd.
Yeah.
Okay. Questions on density? Oh, Maggie, go ahead.
Yeah, can I just say that, I think one of the biggest problems with contact tracing is the lunchtime. I had gone to Post Road yesterday, and their lunch is amazing. I mean, they had the kids separate. They really had a wonderful system. And I was so proud just to walk into that cafeteria and see what they did with those kids. It was amazing. But, when we go to the secondary where we have a lot of kids and we're in the cafeteria, that's where we run into problems as far as, when you have to contact trace and a child was in that cafeteria where there was a lot of kids. So I think it's either we have to put a system down where we have to be very strict and know exactly where the kids go in, or we have to find a way to separate them a little more, especially in the secondary level, because I think that if we do that, we would have a lot less kids that we need to quarantine.
And Maggie, just to comment on that, what we face is, we completely hear and agree, but in a lot of ways, sorry, let me just turn my walkie off. In a lot of ways, that lunchtime is really some of the only time that students get to socially distance themselves and still kind of interact with their peers and kind of see their friends and talk to their friends. So to place more stringent guidelines for what lunch can look like further, at that point, it's like, well, then why come to school? If I can't even talk to my friends at lunch, why come to school at all?
And I understand that. I'm not saying that they can't go with their friends, but maybe we can make it where there's less kids in each room and try to spread it out throughout the school. I'd rather do that than if you have to contact trace, then maybe it's, 60 kids versus 120 kids. That's all I'm saying. If you have a friend, then you could request to sit with your friend at lunch. I mean, I'm just throwing out ideas. That's
no, I get it, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
So Joe, just related, to constantly looking at different ways to bring more students in. I mean, I've certainly seen on social media where parents feel like we ought to have a plan going forward, right? So that there ought to be concrete steps by, December 1st, we're going to do this. And by, January 31st, we're going to do that. And again, just the communication, making it clear that there are so many different parameters and limitations under which we have to work, that it's an impossibility to have a concrete sort of timeline about how changes are going to take place. And with the numbers, COVID cases, going up, just there are so many complicated factors. And so we can't predict exactly, when we're going to be able to do X, Y, or Z, or even what X, Y, and Z are going to be at this point.
Well, I think that's a really good point, and thanks for reminding me, because like everybody else, I'm human and I get too close to these things and I forget about this. To remind everybody that we are still operating under an executive order. We are still in the so-called phase 4, and we're not even permitted to do anything more than what's within the DOH guidelines in terms of opening facilities. So whether you're a school or you're a restaurant, whatever the case may be, you have these guidelines that you have to follow. You're right, because parents have asked often, and rightfully so, well, what's the next step? Numbers are low. Well, this was when numbers in Westchester were low. Numbers are low. What's the next step? When can we expect to be able to move back to normalcy? And the answer, unfortunately, is, and it's still, I don't know. This is going to be, a decision, just like those zones are created by the state. They're not created by the county or the municipality. The next step, if you will, is really at the state level of what school districts are going to be permitted to do. Now, one can hope that if there are changes in wholesale, well, certainly vaccines, and I always like to give Rosemary Eller a digital high five because she works at Pfizer. Certainly vaccines. That's obviously a big end game point, right? But even before that, you start talking about more concerted and organized testing programming and contact tracing programming. I mean, testing and contact tracing. Testing is being done right now at the county level with support from the state, no federal intervention. And contact tracing is being done in the districts with support from the county and the state. So it's a very disparate process that sometimes makes it more challenging. And if you could think that if you had those other pieces on the board, that maybe that would help us. And I'm not talking about, I'm talking about preemptive testing, screening testing, which is not available widespread right now. I think there was, I see a question in the chat. Is a question in chat, all of our secondary schools have large pieces of property. Why aren't we taking advantage of outdoor space? We haven't while we could, not till it'll get colder. Do you want to say more about that, Ms. Bennett? I'm not sure.
So that was my question. And I've been saying that all along. The high school is one of the biggest pieces of property for a high school in Westchester County. Obviously, thinking way outside the box would be tents, heated tents, things like that to keep kids distanced, bring more kids in. Frankly, a really fun way to learn. But when you were just talking about lunch, our nurse was talking about lunch, why wouldn't we have in September had spaces designated for kids to be outdoors?
We do. They can be outdoors.
She just referenced she went yesterday when it was 72 into a cafeteria at Post Road.
Yeah, well, the little children don't eat outdoors, but they can go outdoors at the high school. At the high school, the children can be outdoors during their lunch periods. They can be in the courtyards. Tents, we did actually, the committee did go through with potential for tenting, and I don't know, Frank, if you wanted to just talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, there's three things. The state has requirements under facilities planning that we have to get. Then there's some restrictions on heating the tent, putting sidewalls, lighting. So we are looking at that. We're planning on putting one at the high school in the senior courtyard, but it's going through the process now to go through the state. And the state also told us that we can't keep it up in the winter. So we got to cut it off, put it back in the spring, but during the winter months, we can't have it up because of snow load. So that's, we'd love to have tents and, but we have rules and regulations from the state education department that we got to follow.
Of course, that's understood. And I'm sure it's, drastic, but I just feel like, are we behind on that? Because now it's middle of November. Like I had referenced tents back in July.
That's when we started this.
Right, and so now they'll have to be taken down for winter. It doesn't even make sense to put them up until the spring.
No, I mean, that's when we started that. That's when we started the process, actually prior to July.
Okay, well, at least
But-
someone's on top of it.
Oh, but one of the things too is the state didn't come out with guidelines until I think it was September on tents and permits and what was required.
It's a
Right.
great idea, you know, and
Yeah.
that's, we try to get the kids outside, particularly on days like today and yesterday, as much as possible. You know, one of the challenges is you can't plan on weather, you know, so you're really taking advantage of that great weather in the 48 hours or so that you have it. But you're right. I mean, to the extent possible, being outside has been great. And it's been a big benefit to the kids that we've been able to be out for as long as we have, particularly at recess for our younger age children.
But Dr. Rick, I'll just share, you know, one of the things, the challenges at the secondary level, at least at you know, at the high school level, when it comes to during the lunches, and primarily why we focused on 3 spaces for lunches is supervision as well. You know, we do have a building that requires our security and, you know, monitors to be throughout the building on top of also being in the lunchrooms. And we only have a limited amount of teachers that are part of that supervision as well. So when we're talking about potentially bringing in more students and looking at other spaces, that it's an additional layer that we have to try to satisfy, you know, to make sure that for safety reasons that we have enough, you know, supervision. So that's also part of the challenge that we constantly are exploring and looking at. But just know that that is also part of it, not just space, but also supervision capabilities.
Thank you. There's a question in the chat. My understanding is windows need to be open for circulation in classrooms. How will this be addressed now that winter is coming? We will, in all likelihood, have windows open even during winter in some instances, and we're going to have to deal with that, you know, as we're moving into the winter months. Frank, did you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So we did do an evaluation. All our classrooms are ventilated. You know, they have a unit ventilator that provides fresh air into the classroom space. You know, I have gone around to some of the schools and had conversations. You know, is it prudent? All you have to do is just crack the window open an inch or two to allow, you know, pressurization. So, you know, because right now you're delivering air to the space, and you want air to get out of the space. So if you just crack the window open, that's all they need to depressurize the space. But they don't have to have every window open. I see some of them, they have every window open. That's not required. There is enough fresh air coming in as long as the unit ventilator is running. So as a piece of mechanical equipment, it will break down, you know, so the first thing they should be doing is contacting us to get it repaired.
Thanks, Frank. That's an important point too, that you don't have to have your window wide open. Having that crack in the window to be able to circulate the air is great. But we also know that some people feel good about having the window wide open. And that's one of the things that Suzanne Lasser's putting her thumbs up. That's one of the things that, you know, we understand. Hi, Rosemary.
Hi, quick question, Joe. Just for the benefit of the committee, can you just lay out the plan for sports? I believe, you know, I know, you know, we've discussed that our spring sports are coming to an end, and our fall sports are to begin shortly. Can you just talk a little more concretely about those dates and why they are?
I'd be happy to. I would like to also just start off with a big congratulations to Mr. Cameron, to all of our coaches and support staff, our students, and of course our parents and guardians for a great fall season. As different as it was, our Tigers really did a tremendous job. Everything from cross country to field hockey to soccer to tennis. Just great effort on behalf of everybody. And it was great that we were able to get it in. Of course, the high contact sports that the state did not permit, that's a heartbreaker, you know, and we're hopeful that we'll be able to have those sports running later in the year. That's the plan right now. As we move into the winter season, which begins on the 30th of November, we did hear from the state, not in writing, but during a press conference yesterday, that there is no determination on any change with regard to the so-called high risk or high contact sports for the winter. And that includes, those include, unfortunately, basketball, wrestling. So these, the sports that are going to be available are the sports that Section 1 in the state had been talking about as we move into the winter months, and you're going to see the opportunity for swimming, for bowling, indoor track, which I think there's still conversations about that because of the large size of the meets that take place. But we're anticipating that we're going to be able to again offer athletics in the winter. We also are going to be able to offer off-season training for coaches and students who potentially are interested in taking advantage of that opportunity following the fall season. Now, it's important to note that in order to participate in off-season training, interested coaches are required to put together a plan for review, which would include the number of students to be served, the frequency of training times, the types of activities, so that it all falls within the requirements for health safety as we move forward into that process. That's an important piece there, so that moms and dads and guardians can be confident that even in the off-season training that there is going to be attention paid to making sure that we're not inadvertently spreading any communicable illness, whether it be COVID-19 or anything else. So right now, and there's a question there related, thanks for that question, related to middle school. Right now, we're focusing on high school sports at this time only. We are looking at the possibility of having some type of activities, interscholastic activities, maybe depending upon what we're able to offer. Of course, it gets tricky in the winter months because all of that is typically inside.
And we'll have plans too as well from all of the coaches, right?
Yes, absolutely. Any questions or comments or thoughts or suggestions related to the density and the time in school type of conversation? If not, I want to move us to another topic that I think is pressing and important. Okay, pressing and important. Thanksgiving's coming up, of course. We're looking forward to Thanksgiving and spending time, hopefully, with loved ones. But of course, with that comes some concerns regarding travel and regarding gatherings. Now, it's not within the school district's purview, nor would we ever attempt to do that, to tell people what to do. But certainly we understand that depending upon the plans of folks within any given school district, that can have a direct impact on a school district's ability to be open. And if the case is, for instance, travel, or if there's exposure to COVID-19, those types of things are weighing on our minds. The question has come to us, and I think it's fair and it's appropriate for this committee to at least be thinking about this. Whether or not a school district takes a proactive approach to going remote following a holiday, and whether or not that's feasible. And I'm not going to ask you to vote on this. What I'm asking you to do is to be thinking about it. I will give you a couple of things to consider. Number one, the argument has been made that if school districts preemptively move into a remote environment that encourages travel or not, following the best practice guidelines for keeping oneself safe and healthy. There is also a concern that it could set a precedent that the expectation would be that after every holiday that a school district would be on remote. On the flip side, there are conversations and suggestions that school districts moving into remote following a holiday may actually be able to guarantee that any cases of COVID-19 that may have been acquired over the course of that time will be identified and further reduces the possibility of it coming into a school. All of these, are sort of theoretical, and that's why I wanted to give this topic to the committee to think about, to have a conversation about, to ask questions about, but again, not asking for any votes today, but I did want to put this out on the table for consideration. I'll start out with whoever really wants to weigh in on this first.
Joe, can I just ask a question?
Sure.
And not to say that we have to do what everybody else is doing, but in terms of, you know, the superintendent's groups that you belong to, what are you hearing? And is everybody sort of grappling with this? Are there any conclusions that anyone's come to yet?
Yeah, it's a great question. No, everybody is, we're all thinking about really the same things and the same considerations in our communities. We're all already very concerned with the number of in-person days that are being offered to children in the best case scenario, which of course concerns us regarding any pre-planned remote learning situations. At the same time, we're all very cognizant that people are going to travel, and that people are going to celebrate the holiday with loved ones and friends, and that could create a situation where we see increased cases of the illness. That said, we've not really talked about making a preemptive move prior to the holiday. I mean, I think it comes down to this, Cheryl, it's a great question. If a school district needs to take action, a school district can take action at any time. It need not necessarily take preemptive action. The other piece is a question as to whether or not the state itself is going to weigh in on this conversation, thereby sort of nullifying any decision that the local districts might make. And we've seen some indicators with regard to the direction that, for instance, SUNY and CUNY have taken as approaching the holidays. So the short answer to your question is no, nobody has made any decisions yet. And no, I don't think that there will likely be a landslide of school districts that would be making a preemptive decision.
And having just talked about sports, for example, and winter sports starting November 30th, making a preemptive decision to close for, 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, then how does that affect sports? How does that affect special education children?
Major concerns.
Right.
Yeah, major concerns, particularly with student populations who are relying on schools, which are all students, but there are different degrees, certainly, major considerations there as well. Anybody else have any thoughts?
Joe, I do. A couple points. I do believe that if we were to do this remote after Thanksgiving, that the sooner we put this in place so parents could make arrangements, because that would be an issue, and that staff can properly gear towards it. I can speak, and I know it may not be the popular sentiment right now, that many staff members are very nervous at the increasing numbers surrounding our school district, or even in our school district, of a super spreader. By far right now, we have been relatively lucky, for lack of a better word, but who knows what it will look like. It is my understanding that so many other parents wish to see us be 5 days, have their children in, every day. But at this time, with the amount of the unknowns and what this could present, I do think that a decision should be made sooner than later. Or the flip side to this is, if we go to a orange or red, right, the decision is made for us. So I just wanted to put it out there. But from staff side, from the union side, we think that this is a smart move.
Thanks, Adele. Really appreciate the feedback. Certainly also understand the sentiment of all of us, right? Our colleagues having concerns about numbers increasing, being in quarantine, so on and so forth. All very, very valid points. And information for parents and guardians, the sooner the better. Staff members, everybody understood.
Dr. Ricka, just to kind of piggyback on that, every morning I send out a daily survey to my staff just to find out the temperature of the building. And Thanksgiving is continuing to come up about the high anxiety level that this is presenting to the staff. So I don't know if there's really a right answer either way that we go with this. I can just say that our staff is really worried about it. And, you know, we want to support them and keep them as safe as possible. Also, as a parent in the district, I have 2 kids at the MAS, you know, I would love my kids to be in every day, of course, but it's also, I want them to be safe, right? So if this means that they're going to be safe, you know, I want to edge on the side of safety. So I don't know the right decision, but I think there's a lot of variables that we have to keep in mind while we're making the decision.
Thanks, Mr. Eaton. Great points. Unfortunately, as we've learned over these last 9.5 months, even the most benign decisions these days are oftentimes just extraordinarily complex. One thing I will say is that is available always is the option for parents and guardians to choose full remote. And this, to me, you know, is always really, this is stuck in my mind. We've been able to give the option for parents and guardians to choose full remote, but we've not been able to give the option for parents and guardians to choose full in-person for well understood reasons. But I also do see that, and I know you do too, as a challenge that remains. And for moms and dads and guardians who do want to see and would be willing to send their children back, you know, full day, every day, today, that strikes them as a real heavy duty challenge. And I understand that. Other thoughts?
Well, I feel that with the cold season and everybody being in and during the holiday, I feel that, you know, there is going to be more disease. That's just going to be something that we're going to have to face. But I also feel that if we don't keep the schools open, then, you know, all of the kids that are well, and it's a really hard decision at the end of the day, but I am afraid of the mitigation of disease, trying to contain the disease within the school after the holidays. So I have to voice that.
Maggie, quick question. So is it fair to say that every day there is some portion of our staff, especially our teaching professionals, our professionals in the classroom with the students, are out on quarantine?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we do have, you know, quite a few people out, but I also have to give it to the community and to the parents, because we have had a lot of cases where the children have been home. You know, those cases that I talked about today, those kids were not in school. Those parents kept the kids home, and they did the right thing. And because of that, you know, you're going to see 3 cases in the dashboard, but these kids have not gone into school, and they have not affected our school community. So you might see more cases in our dashboard, but a lot of the times it's not affecting our schools. Yes, we have had a couple of, you know, staff that have been positive, and we do have to quarantine, and I'm quite, how could I say, conservative with quarantining, because I want to make sure that I capture everyone. So, you know, just to make sure that our schools remain safe. So we're just basically safeguarding everyone that comes into the school every day. But with the holiday, I am concerned about having an increased amount of people going to families and then coming into the schools and having an outbreak. So that is in the back of my mind. But I don't think that, you know, everybody, you know, has to say 14 days. I don't know if that's the right thing to do either. So I'm looking at different districts. What are they doing? I've been calling everybody to see what different things people are doing. And I share them with Dr. Ricka. So that's the story.
Thanks, Maggie. And I know everybody knows, Maggie, you're doing your absolute best. So right answers are usually dependent upon the lens through which you're looking at it, and what's in the, you know, your particular situation. So we really appreciate that, Maggie. You know, really what would be helpful and I don't know that it's possible, but what would be helpful would be for New York State DOH to really be able to give an assessment based on the numbers, based on what we learned back in the spring and trends associated with the rise. You know, even if it was just sort of a percentage point of what we're looking at in terms of the likelihood, right? But I know having not gone through a Thanksgiving holiday and a pandemic, that might be a hard projection to make. The best thing that we can do, regardless of what the school district schedule is to keep attending to our own sort of personal sphere of influence. And I do need to give a huge shout out to the moms and dads and guardians in White Plains, because we begged and begged over the summer to please make sure we were keeping our children home if they weren't feeling well. And by and large, we have been seeing that. And moms and dads and guardians have been taking a very conservative approach. And if their children have the sniffles or if they have a cough, they have been keeping them home. And that has helped, because we have, in those instances, identified cases of students who were sick. And by keeping them home early, that really did help and make sure it didn't spread in school. So thanks to our community members there.
Joe?
Yep, sure, hi.
Hi, I'd like to just mention one thing, if that's okay. Along those same lines of, you're talking about Thanksgiving, and one of the things, and I actually spoke with Maggie about this as well, one of the considerations is, it's not only our children that I think we want to know if they're not feeling well or they're sick. I think what's equally important is if someone in their household is. And I don't think our survey currently accounts for that. So if we're considering the impacts of Thanksgiving, maybe we can somehow modify that or get some other information point to make sure parents are reporting if, you know, they're exposed, or if they're a grandparent is exposed, because I think our kids are bringing it from the outside in, to your earlier point. I don't think it's happening in school, but kids are getting it on the outside, bringing it in. And, you know, just to avoid being shut down in the future, maybe that would be something to consider. If we, as a parent, I would love to see my kid in school every day too, but I'm nervous. I'd rather keep everyone safe. And even if that meant shutting down 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, maybe that's prudent. But if not, maybe we can just get more data. I don't know, just throwing that out there.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you very much.
Dr. Ricker, just to clarify, you're talking about the 3.5 weeks between Thanksgiving and Christmas, or maybe it's a little bit longer than that now by the time everyone's back after Christmas, of a potential full remote?
Oh, no. And I'm sorry, I should have said this. Well, let me say this. I heard there was a rumor that we were considering going full remote the week leading up to Thanksgiving and then all the way through the winter holidays. That is absolutely not true. That's not accurate. We've never discussed that, so I'm sorry. That was probably started by an ingenious tiger. That's not the plan. What we were talking about right now, Ms. Bounty, was the conversation about a 5-day or a 1 calendar week full remote, or a 2 calendar week 14-day full remote following Thanksgiving, and that was the only thing that we didn't talk about the winter holiday yet.
I thought you meant the gap between Thanksgiving and Christmas being that.
It would be the gap, but I don't think it would take you all the way. Yes, it's in that gap, yeah, but it wouldn't take you all the way to the.
Just protecting everyone from anyone that may not have followed the state's rules with travel for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
I think your recommendation to ask for something from the Department of Health is very wise.
Thank you. We are weekly, as you know, we meet with the county executive, his team at the Department of Health, and then we also meet with representatives from the state regularly as well. So it's hard to tell when a new sort of requirement will come out. Sometimes they come out, just very quickly, but we are hoping that we'll be able to get some more clear information about how the state is looking at the holidays, particularly given that we're seeing an increase, and it's not just New York, by the way, we're seeing increases in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Pennsylvania. So all of the contiguous states, right, which of course the travel rules are relaxed to an extent, and then every other state in the union outside of the contiguous states have higher rules for travel. So we'll keep, and I know, again, I have to be respectful of your time. We'll come back to this again at I'll have another update for you at our next meeting. But are there any additional updates or anything that maybe we missed that anyone wanted to share? Go ahead, Rosemary. Yep, thanks.
All right, I just have to say something. Every bit of feedback that we're hearing here is so important and appreciated. I do have to, whenever I hear anything, and I'll be honest, I'll pick up the phone and really I will share the feedback. I know Dr. Hand and I have had a lot of conversations about moving parts, as we have Dr. Ricca, as well as the board has. We are trying to manage something that right now is unmanageable, and that is very frustrating. We want our kids in school. We know in-person instruction is best. I've had numerous staff tell me that, but there's a palpable fear that it's scary. We're trying to be concrete, right? When things change daily, it's a target that we really want to nail down and say, if this happens, this is what we'll do. If then this, we can't even get there because the target changes before we can. So we appreciate the feedback, the thoughts, anything that makes us think differently or move differently. Please let us know. And thank you to everyone who is operating in that medium of change and thought, and for every idea that is dropped that you give thought for that. That is very appreciated. So I just want to add that, as well as, our board will continue to say thank you and appreciate you with deep admiration for what you are doing and for everyone who brings feedback, because you are what makes White Plains the place that it is.
Thanks, Mrs. Eller. All right. Well, thank you for taking the time out today. We'll make sure that we get this up for the community to be able to listen. And you all have your calendar invites for our next meeting. I'll resend it again just in case, and then we'll be back on schedule again. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Stay safe.